You watch an eagle snatch a fish from a lake and think of birds as elegant, precise, a little delicate. Now picture a bird standing taller than you, sprinting at highway speeds, with a hooked beak the size of a horse's skull, built specifically to hack apart prey too large for almost anything else to challenge. That's not fantasy. For roughly 60 million years, those birds were the apex predators of an entire continent. And the real story of how they got there and why they eventually vanished is stranger than most people realize. Start with South America, isolated for tens of millions of years after breaking away from other continents, evolving its own ecosystem largely without the large predatory mammals dominating elsewhere in the world. Into that ecological vacuum stepped an unlikely family of apex predators, the Phorusrhacids, more commonly known as terror birds. Some species stood over 2.5 meters tall and weighed upwards of 130 kilograms. Their legs were built for speed, likely capable of running down prey other predators couldn't catch. Their skulls housed enormous, deep, hook-tipped beaks, and recent biomechanical studies suggest their neck and beak worked together like a hatchet, delivering rapid, powerful downward strikes rather than a slow, crushing bite. The paleontologist Federico de Grange, who has spent years studying terror bird anatomy and hunting behavior, has helped reconstruct just how specialized these predators actually were. His research on terror bird skull mechanics suggests their unique attack style, quick, precise strikes, rather than prolonged wrestling matches, was likely necessary because their skulls, while powerful in a single strike, weren't well suited to withstand prolonged struggling from large, resistant prey. In other words, terror birds probably hunted like living hatchets. Strike fast, strike accurately, then retreat and repeat if needed, rather than engaging prey in a drawn-out physical struggle the way a big cat might. For most of their existence, terror birds ruled largely unchallenged. South America's isolation meant few large mammalian predators existed to compete with them, and terror birds diversified into multiple species, filling various predatory niches across the continent. Then, roughly 2.7 to 3 million years ago, something changed the entire ecological equation. The Isthmus of Panama fully formed, physically connecting North and South America for the first time in tens of millions of years. What followed is known among paleontologists as the Great American Biotic Interchange, and it reshaped the wildlife of two continents almost overnight, geologically speaking. Species that had evolved in isolation for millions of years suddenly found themselves sharing territory with entirely new competitors and predators migrating down from North America, including saber-toothed cats, bears, and other large mammalian predators that had spent millions of years competing and refining their hunting strategies against equally sophisticated mammalian prey and rivals. Here's the twist that genuinely reframes the whole story. Terror birds didn't necessarily lose because they were weaker or less capable predators. They lost, at least in part, because they'd spent millions of years perfecting their skills in an ecosystem with comparatively less predatory competition. North American predators arrived having been sharpened by constant competition against other highly capable predators for millions of years. When those two evolutionary histories collided, the newcomers, battle-tested by relentless competition, had an edge that raw hunting ability alone couldn't fully offset. It wasn't a single dramatic battle. It was a slow reshuffling of an entire ecosystem, as terror birds found themselves competing for prey against animals that were, in many respects, just as capable, and arriving in far greater diversity and numbers than South America had ever needed to contend with before. The last terror bird species held on until roughly 1.8 million years ago, a species called Titanus, found as far north as Florida, evidence that terror birds didn't simply retreat and vanish, but actively pushed into new territory even as their world was fundamentally changing around them. So the true story of terror birds isn't one of failure. It's a 60 million year run as apex predators, ended not by a single stronger rival, but by an entire ecosystem colliding with another, forcing an evolutionary specialist built for one kind of competition to suddenly face an entirely different, more crowded kind. So the next time you watch a hawk or an eagle glide gracefully overhead, remember that birds weren't always the smaller, more delicate half of the predator equation. For 60 million years, on an entire continent, They were the largest, fastest, most dominant hunters, walking the ground beneath them. The more we learn about the past, the better we understand ourselves. If this video sparked your curiosity, don't forget to like, subscribe, and follow Phoenix Primeval for more fascinating stories from history, science, and human evolution. Thanks for watching.